Hey everyone! This time on Tim Talks Audio, we continue the stock plugin series, this time going over the expander. When we're working with dynamic processors, your go-tos are probably compression and limiting. But you should also really think about expansion and gates. Those could be considered the opposites of limiting and compression. You can put all four of those into the same family of dynamic processors, where limiting and compression takes the loudest peaks and kind of squishes them down. Expansion and gating takes the quiet parts and either puts them further away or cuts them out completely. Today we're going over the stock plugin of Expander, so let's dive into the DAW and go over the controls and some uses for it. So here we are inside Studio One version 5 looking at the expander. Now, like I said a minute ago, an expander is the opposite of a compressor, where a compressor will take anything over the threshold and turn it down a little bit. With an expander, anything below the threshold will get pushed down out of the way. So this is all of like your microphone bleed or just some extra noise that you don't need. Instead of cutting it out, you could use an expander. So let's get into these controls. On the left are your typical dynamic processor controls, your threshold and your ratio. But like I said, these kind of work the opposite of a compressor. The threshold says anything below this, I want you to send it further down in volume or attenuate it by the ratio. And you'll notice in a ratio for a compressor, you'll normally see 2:1, 3:1, things like that. On the expander, it's reversed. So it's 1:5 or 1:x. Very quickly moving on to the right is our user interface, where we can see and manipulate the controls of the expander. And what I mean by manipulate is I can grab either one of these nodes and change things around. So right now I'm adjusting the threshold. And if I grab this one on bottom, I'm going to adjust both the ratio and the reduction range. On the left-hand side over here, this is the amount of reduction we're seeing, this yellow bar here. So this is going to equal whatever our range is, especially when we're not even playing any music, because it's still working. There's nothing going through, so it's definitely quiet, and it's pushing it down even further. At the bottom here is the look ahead function, which engages a 2 millisecond look ahead detector circuit. And it just allows it to see what's coming up, whether it be a hit from maybe a drum or something else. It allows the expander to actually open things up a little early, so you're not really cutting off the very beginning or the transient of whatever you are expanding. There's another button to the right here, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Up on the top right, you have reduction, and that's the range. This is how far or how much attenuation you're going to be doing to the signal below the threshold. By default, it's -24. So anything below the threshold is going to push it down 24 additional dB. Then you have your envelope, which you've seen these on compressors as well, attack and release times. Attack is how quickly does the expander stop the reduction when something comes over the threshold, and release is when something comes back down below the threshold, how long it takes to recover to that amount of range reduction. And then on bottom is the sidechain section. This is the detector circuit of the expander. And in here you can engage your filters for a high pass or low pass. So I can go ahead and engage it. Then these controls will come on. And I can say, you know what, I don't want to listen below 73 hertz. And I really want to just hone in to everything under 690 hertz for this case. So it's going to cut off everything above there. Then in the center, you can swap these frequencies. Now, in this case, it's probably not the best way to swap, but you have the ability to do so. And of course, you have the ability to listen to your sidechain, so you can really hone in the frequencies that you're cutting out and just get the concentrated area that you're looking for. Then, because this is a dynamic processor and we're working in Studio One 5, we have external sidechaining. So because we have external sidechaining, I can have something else trigger this expander. And when we have it engaged, it turns on that extra button on bottom, which was the ducking button. Right now, I don't have anything set, but we'll see if we can find an example for this to show you exactly what I'm talking about later. Okay, we've gone over all of the controls. Now, what I think we should do is reset this back to default and put it into use. I'm actually going to turn this one off. And a really good use of expanders is on live drums. And I pulled open this session because it's a live set and I've soloed out the drums. And I want you to listen for something. I'm gonna hit play and it's before the drum hits start. And I did this for a reason. So let's just take a listen to what we have so far with no expanders on. So before the drums started hitting and in between everything, you can hear a lot of what was happening on stage. You can hear the guitars just feeding back a little and making noise. Then when we get into it, you can hear them doing the riff, same thing with the bass, and then the vocalist came in and you heard all of that as well. Well, we can use expanders to really stretch the space from when these drums aren't playing and push some of that mic bleed, and that's exactly what we're listening to, down further. I wouldn't necessarily want to do a gate, which is almost the opposite of limiting, and cut everything off because it could be a little too snappy or I might miss some transients. But with an expander, I can just kind of push it a little further away. So let's dial in some settings. I think a really good example is actually going to be our snare drum. So the expander, I'm just going to bypass it and let's listen to just the snare drum mic. So I can hear some of the kick hits, I can hear a little bit of the cymbal hits and the hi-hat, and really I just want to push those a little bit further away. Not even a lot. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually go to my range, and -24 is actually going to be a little strong for me. I'm actually going to put this closer to about -10, and I'll just kind of eyeball it for now. I'm going to take it out of bypass, and then we're going to adjust my threshold. So it's already way quieter in between the hits. Let's put it in the bypass one more time. And the same spot. So we've taken those kick hits and the cymbals and just pushed them further away. In this case, I've done it by 10 dB, which is a little bit, but at the same time, it is a lot. If I was gonna make this any harder or stronger, I may as well just go with a gate. Now what I can also do is adjust my attack and release times. Maybe I want this to really snap open, so I'm gonna have a very short or fast attack time, and I'm gonna relax the release to let the snare ring just a little bit more. Let's fast forward a little bit and take a listen to this. I think that's better. Maybe we can even slow the release down just a hair more. Now I'm getting enough of the body of this snare ringing out. And then all I have to do is compare it in the drum mix. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll take this out of solo, but put all of our drums back into solo. And we will still get some bleed because we haven't done any other expanders on any other drum shells. So things like your toms, your kick, your snare. But I wouldn't do this on your overheads. That's gonna get the overall picture of your drums. So with just the snare drum, expand it a bit. Let's take a listen. Really tight. Let's take this out and listen again. Okay, not bad. Now, let's do the cheat code. I'm going to turn this back on, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this to all of my shells. So my kick drum, my low tom, and my high tom are all going to get the same expander, and just by dragging it and dropping it. Don't mind these other ones on here. That's for something later. Now we've put the same expander with the same settings on the other shells. Let's take a listen to it now. Not bad, much cleaner. And then if I even take the overheads off, let's do a before and after of the shells with our expanders on and off. I'll turn it off and then turn it back on. Did you hear the vocals at the end? They're still coming through a little bit actually on the kick mic because that's the one that's opening up the most, but not nearly as much when the expanders are off. This is the power of expansion. You can clean up your drums a lot without totally killing them. If we really wanted, we could go into the kick and just adjust the expander settings. Maybe we will go in and shorten that release. That'll clean it up, make it a little snappier, and push those vocals out of this microphone and out of our overall drum sound. So there it is. That's the expander inside Studio One. And you thought I was finished, but we're not quite there yet. Let's go right back in. Okay, you may have seen this before, but on the snare channel, I had the fat channel. And the reason I had the fat channel on is because the fat channel also has a gate built in, but it also has an engageable expander right on it. So let's do everything again, but we'll use the fat channel this time because we can follow it up with compression and equalization to really dial in our drum sounds. And maybe we'll do a touch of that here, but I'll let you experiment with that in your own mixes. So let's go ahead and solo out that snare drum and just dial in our expander again. I have the gate on and expander engaged. Let's do the same thing. I want a quickish attack, which it's already faster than the other one. And I'm going to speed up the release a little to kind of get the same idea as just the stock expander that we used before, which is off right now. The fat channel is the first in the chain and it's not going through the follow-up expander. Now all we need to do is dial in our threshold. You'll notice here with the expander that it turns the range to an auto mode, where with the gate, you can actually dial this in to the exact range you want. So let's experiment with this one and see what we get. Let's dial in that threshold and we'll kind of eyeball it to where it was before. And now let's listen to our snares. We'll once again do a before and after, so I'll bypass and then we'll put it back in. So as we were doing it, I was messing around with the threshold a little and I just have to find the sweet spot for it. I think the attack is okay. I slowed the release down slightly and we really just have to listen. And we can actually key listen to hear what is getting cut out. So there we go. In the fat channel, I think we've dialed in a pretty nice little expander. And this is the first in our chain. So we can follow it up with the compressor and the equalizer and not worry that the bleed is going to get the same processing. So as you can see, using an expander in your drum mixes can be very powerful. It helps you really separate out the mic bleed that you would get. And this goes great for live recordings like we were listening to here, or your studio recordings as well. You might all be practicing in the same jam room at your rehearsal space or in somebody's basement or in the recording studio where it's just the drummer, but maybe there's some click bleed coming from the headphones. You can push all of that away and not totally cut it off with an expander. That's all for now. If you found anything informative, please like and share the video. For more, visit timplansbaum.com, and if you have a question, ask it in the comments and I'll answer it in a future video. Thanks for watching.